Hello, it's Paula from On a String. It's my Facebook Live monthly session, and this one is going to be on bead embroidery basics. So I have got a few samples to go through and show people today, and I've got some techniques that I'm going to go through and demonstrate as well. This session will probably go for about an hour, so bear with me while I flip the camera over and I'll start to go through some samples of some bead embroidery basics. If you've got any questions, by all means, pop them up into the comment section. I'll do my best to answer them throughout the live, and hopefully we get to see some really great finished pieces when I'm gone through it. So hang on one moment while I flip the camera and then we'll go from there. Good morning, Lorraine. Nice to see you here. Just flip my camera. And so now you get to see my lovely clean work surface that I've prepared for you today. So as I said, what I'm going to go through today is show you some bead embroidery basics techniques. So bead embroidery is probably my favourite technique of all time, and I love it because of the creativity that you get to have with it. You can create and build some really beautiful sculptural pieces. You can make mistakes and repair them really easily, so it's a fabulous technique. Really, really cool, and uses some great components. And I thought I'd just go through and show you some of the samples of things that I've done over the years. So this one here is a peacock cuff bracelet, and it's by a woman called Linda Landy as the designer. I did this in the States a few years ago. And this one you can see has got some beautiful 3D textures here with the O beads making that peacock tail, some bugle beads in here and O beads with little stop stitches making that feather shape, and then some sort of little hexagon shaped beads here to create that feature of the peacock. So this one also has some little wire beads here to create that plumed fringe. So a really great way of using beads to cover an entire surface, but also to create that 3D raised effect. So that's the peacock cuff bracelet. Another one from one of my favourite designers is the Mountain Girl cuff. So this one comes from a woman called Regina Payne, and she has a great Facebook group where she promotes these cuffs, and you get the whole kit with, you know, it usually has a really beautiful focal, some vintage beads on the sides to go here, you know, some buttons and some tiller beads to go around the edges. So this one has some little half tillers and the larger full-size tillers, some little cup chain in there as well. And you can see by this raised side how much actual depth is built up into this. Good morning, Alex. So this is another beautiful example of a raised and 3D feature effect, and it's got a lovely edge here, and then of course the backing with ultra suede. So that's a beautiful cuff by Regina Payne, and this one has, you know, a lovely button closure as well, so really easy to do up and take on and off. This one here I thought I'd show you as well with the use of fabric, and I can't remember the designer. I did this one quite a few years ago. I'll have to try and remember who it was from. But this one here, good morning, good morning. This one here uses fabric as a backing, and you can see the fabric just here and here on the side. And what I love about this is the image of the paisley, which is in the fabric here, is then replicated in the bead format as well. So it has a really large central focal with some raised little resin beaded flowers on here, some brick stitch edging, so a different way to do edging around a particular focal. And this one also has that sort of repeating pattern throughout it with the little bugle beads, some little square beads in here as well, and another different way of closing again. This one has press studs for a closure. So they've all got a different technique and feel to them, but that one I'll have to try and remember who that cuff actually was designed by. This is another one that I designed a few years ago as a Bead Society entry in our annual expo. And this one uses shibori silk. So again, not the entire surface is covered with beads. There's just a sort of repeating pattern and theme in there. But the shibori silk gives a really nice background. And this one's got a little bit of a different edged to it as well. It's a shaped piece and uses buttons to actually close it. But again, it's got that lovely ultra suede on the back, and then beads as the feature to create that 3D, and it's got a beautiful rivoli in the centre. Another one I thought I'd show today was This is a fully beaded piece. So this is a pendant piece that I made a few years ago for a Bead Society challenge. The theme was using orange and red. So again, the entire surface is covered with beads, and it's the repeating themes of the orange squares. So I've treated these the same way in each time of this design. The orange round dots are exactly the same in the way that they've been treated. The red are the same as well as are the white. So that's how thematically that has come together. It's got little pieces of fringed crystal in here as well to create that different sort of raised effect, and you can just sort of see that. And some little arches there that I've made to actually capture the rest of the beads in stringing. So that was it's sort of a large pendant piece. Thanks, Lorraine. I think they're always better in person than they are on camera, but at least you get to see them today. Now this is one of my all-time favourites. I made this one a few years ago as part of a Bead Society challenge, and this one I found a brooch in in an old shop. And I took the backing off the brooch, and you can see the blue that's behind there, and it's actually fabric that I've stuffed in the background. So that's the fabric that I've used there, and I've stuffed that into the back of that mask, and then matched it with a beautiful focal. That one came from Natalie Fletcher-Jones of Peruzzi Beads. So this one here is just then matched, the colours match really well with the blue. It's got these tiny little blue sort of crown focals here as well, and then a matching beaded tassel as well. So that's just different components all together in bead embroidery. And this one here is, oh, thanks, Ryan. I'm glad you're enjoying it. That's my son being a smart aleck. This one here has got some beautiful stringing on there as well. He knows that all of these beads that I'm showing here today are part of his inheritance, so I'm sure he's loving this. This really large piece here, this was a Bead Society piece a few years ago in 2015. And this one is, really one of those statement pieces. But again, it's that whole concept of repeating themes. So I've got a large central focal here with the little square pearls around it. I've also got here that same square pearl finish on this little cross piece here. These are all vintage pieces that I scoured from somewhere. Again, that sort of repeating pattern here. And then again, the pearls have got that similar treatment and repeating pattern. So that's how you build the actual design. Natalie, she does have the most amazing pieces, doesn't she, Lorraine? I love her work. Hi, Shelley. Nice to see you here from Texas. This one here is just, one of my favourite pieces to wear, and it's also got this beautiful chain, repeating rope as well with little rings and that sort of strapped piece. So that's a massive big bead embroidery piece. And just one more I'm going to show you today. So this, again, showing fabric. This was one that I designed from a King & Nichols inspiration box challenge. So this one uses fabric. So you can see here, you don't have to cover your entire surface with beads. You can actually use fabric to highlight that as well. It's got some gorgeous little sea pearls here and Rizzo beads to create that frame, and then that sort of domed focal in the centre. So that's just some of the bead embroidery I've done over the years. But what I thought I'd go through today is just show you some of the examples and the way to actually utilise it. And I have a cabochon that I prepared earlier. So this is just a little ceramic, and actually I think this one is from Natalie as well, a little ceramic focal here. What I'm going to do is show you how to actually do capturing this cabochon with some varying techniques. And then I've got some different materials that I actually want to try and mount this on today, and I'll go through and show you what that is. But I've got some gorgeous snakeskin leather here. So this is a really nice feeling, and the other side of it is beautiful too. So I'm not quite sure which way I would like to use that, but beautiful leather. I've got some gorgeous chiffon sort of material, and I could put that over the top of the leather as well, potentially. And I also have some cork. So this is really thin cork fabric material with that sort of black dots. And this is probably what I'm going to utilise this with, because I grabbed out some black beads to do with this as well. And I think this is going to look really nice as a mounted piece, and potentially as a pendant is what I'll actually make with it today. Okay, so here's my little piece here, and what I'm going to do is thread my needle. Now, with bead embroidery, you can use pretty much any thread. I tend to use fireline most of the time, unless I'm going to have an area where my thread is going to be showing, and I might want to do a matched colour. But for this piece, fireline is perfectly suitable to use. The beauty of using fireline with this type of thing is that you can join your thread really easily if you have to, but you can also add new threads in as you need to. Bead embroidery is super forgiving to be able to add new threads into, because you can use your foundation piece, and just put a little tiny knot in it and thread it on really easily. So super easy to actually add new threads in with bead embroidery. Sorry, I just had to try and find my glasses, so I have found those now. So super easy to add in new thread. And one of the things, it's, the embroidery pieces that, you might have done as a child. I know I used to learn embroidery with my nana and my grandma, was to just tie a knot in the end of the thread. And I'm going to go from the back through to the front. So please good morning, Meg. Please bear in mind, if I tend to stray off camera and my hands go off camera, please tell me, because sometimes I forget. So what I'm going to do is actually just do a nice edge on this one I grabbed out this permanent finish mauve, and it's actually, I think it's more of a browny colour, but it's called a mauve. And this is a size 11 bead. And when you're capturing a cabochon on bead embroidery, you want to actually come up over the edge so that it stays in place. And this piece is actually glued onto this foundation fabric with some E6000. So this is pretty much the only glue that I would use for bead embroidery. It's a really easy one to apply, so you might use like a toothpick or something to actually put it on. I've been known to use my awl to actually attach it as well, but super easy just to glue that on. And this one's actually been sitting for a little while, so it's well and truly glued. Now, when you're actually capturing a cabochon, you need to have an even number of beads around your piece, because you want to be able to then do some peyote stitch afterwards. So doing a sets of 2 or sets of 4 is the way that I would start this foundation piece. So for me, I've just picked up 2 to start with, but I am going to be super speedy and pick up 4 beads now each time and go around my cab with 4 beads. So I want to make sure that I've got an even number, because otherwise my peyote stitch will not work if it's not an even number. There's some other ways that you can capture your cabs in bead embroidery as well. You can use things like a cubic right angle weave piece and create a little frame like that. I've sort of done that type of thing. You can also, depending upon the type of cab that you have, you may not need to come over the edge of your cab piece. So that one that I showed earlier, the square one with the brick stitch edging, those beads actually don't go over the edge of that cab, they just sit alongside it. So you can see on my piece there, what I'm trying to do is get my beads to sit right up alongside my piece. And I'm doing what's called bead embroidery back stitch. So I'm adding on my set of 4 beads and then coming back through the previous beads there. So I'm now going through 5 beads so that I'm securing those beads onto the piece. So this bead embroidery back stitch is one of the basics that you would use all the time in bead embroidery. So again, I pick up my 4 beads, I go through, I sort of judge where I think 4 beads is on my piece there. Good morning, Glenda. Good morning, Meg. And put my needle where I think 4 beads is, about there. Come back and go through sort of that 5th bead section. And then go back again through those 5 beads. So this, I have only ever used 2 beads doing this, and I did a class with Katrina Starpins at Christmas time at our Bead Society retreat, and she told me she always picks up 4, and I figure Katrina's one of the most beautiful bead embroiderers I've ever seen. If she can do it with 4 beads, I can do it with 4 beads as well. So just some of the tips that you pick up when you do classes or see demonstrations with different people is one way of expanding your bead embroidery or beading skills. So you can see there I've now started to get that really nice ring around my cab, and I will keep going. So if there are any questions, by all means pop them through on the comments and I will do my best to answer those questions. And tell me your experiences with doing bead embroidery. I know for some people will never do it. They don't like it at all, but I love it. I just find that it's super, super forgiving. If you make a mistake, you can cut it off and reapply really easily. It's not too difficult. You can certainly bead over it if you can build up and create a more 3D finished effect if you build up over it. So yeah, it's a super, super forgiving way to get creative. And the use of fabrics in bead embroidery to create that sort of background foundation is a really nice way to bring some contrast and interest into your piece. So as I said, you don't have to cover your entire surface, and I'll talk about the surfaces in a moment. You can actually use fabric to do that too. So one of the things that you use to bead onto is what's called Lacey's Stiff Stuff, or Nicole's bead embroidery backing, which I don't think gets made anymore, but Lacey's Stiff Stuff is one of those, and that comes in either white or black. And that white or black is a really good foundation piece, particularly when you are covering your entire piece with beads. You can actually then, you won't see the foundation fabric underneath. You can also get, there's a brand called, well, it was called Nicole's Bead Backing, which comes in different colours. So that comes in colours like this, like purple. I've got some pink here as well, and some beige. So again, if you're trying to match your pieces, you can actually use a coloured bead backing to actually do that. But if you're not too concerned about trying to match it and you know that you're going to be covering your surface with beads, the black or the white are super easy to use and really accessible from lots of your bead suppliers. I've actually painted, and I'll find the sample of that when I can think where it is. I've painted stiff stuff as well with acrylic paints, so you actually get another finish again if you want to sort of just showcase the beads and not necessarily cover over your entire piece. So super versatile fabric, and it's like a piece of sort of stiff cardboard feel to it, and it's one that, you know, it stays fairly straight, you know, stays fairly stiff, and depending upon what sort of a beader you are, it may hold its shape, but it can also get a bit misshapen as well with lots of handling. So I suppose it depends on how much beadwork you're actually doing on this piece as to how misshapen it can actually get. And one of the ways to then stiffen that, if it is a little bit misshapen, is to put like a thin film of plastic in your piece as well. So, and I'll go and show you that shortly also. You can use like a plastic milk bottle or something like that, or some craft plastic. So I'm getting near the end, and remember, I want to be even. So I've picked up 4 beads every time. I've got a nice gap there that I think 2 beads are going to fit into just perfectly. And one of my tips for this is I could fit 2 or 3 in here, but I want to remain even, so I'm only going to fit 2 in. And I would rather fit in less than more, because as soon as you try and squash in a bead, it certainly goes wonky. It's not a great look when you're trying to squash a bead in, so I would rather stretch over that gap than actually try and add in an extra bead. So I'm just going to go back down and in my bead embroidery fabric here, just to sort of tighten that again. And you can see now, if I just sort of scooch those beads along, you don't see any gap there. So there's my base row of my cabochon that I'm actually going to bead embroider around. So with a base row, I'm now going to do a row of peyote. And remember, I want to try and come up over the edge of this cab just slightly. So to do that, you'll actually just reduce your bead type by size. So I will do 1 row of size 11 beads here, and I'm actually going to swap colours and do a different colour. And I grabbed them out before. Oh, there they are. So I've got this sort of black tan mix, and what I want to do is do my 2nd row in that, because if I use that cork fabric with those little tiny black dots on it, this will be a good way to bring in some black with that as well. So you can see that black mix. So I'm just going to do 1 simple row of peyote stitch all the way around this cab, and that's building a nice little side wall. And what I want is that bead to sit on top of that previous size 11 bead just here. So I'm trying not to, I don't want to pull too tightly. I'm just doing a simple peyote stitch just so that it just neatly flicks that bead up over that side edge. And then my next row will be a row of Delica beads. So the Delica beads are a smaller size. Remember I said I'm going to build up this wall by doing varying bead types that reduce in size. So I'm not reducing the quantity of beads as in a decrease. I'm actually reducing the bead type and size to get that frame to build up over the edge. This is probably the hardest row to do when you're doing a bead embroidery piece, because you're going down into that foundation row. It's not as easy to see where the holes are to step up into it like it is on my next row. Will be super, super easy. It's just a little bit harder, but using a cabochon in the center of your bead embroidery focal is often how you will see most pieces, I think, designed. And that cabochon could be one major central piece. It could actually be lots of repeating patterns like the orange one that I showed earlier. It could be a small Rivoli crystal, but it's a great starting point for the design of your bead embroidery piece. So what it actually looks like at the end, well, we'll get there and we'll see what that is. But having a large cab as your focal piece is a great way to actually start. So this is one of the basic techniques that you will utilise is capturing a cabochon. Again, this can be done for a range of different things. You could make a pendant straight out of this cab without actually doing the rest of the bead embroidery work that we're going to do today, and I'll show you another technique as well on how to do a very simple bead embroidery pendant focal, which that one is, yeah, a great easy technique if you don't want to do any more foundation rows or pieces. Okay, so this one here, you can see there I've just done my first or my second row all the way around. That one's just twisted. Just pull that through. Popped up. Okay, so I've got my second row all the way around. Now remember, I'm going to reduce the bead type now to actually get that size down. And I've grabbed some Delicas. So I've got the number 40 Delica, which is this lovely coppery colour. And I'm going to just do one row of Delicas around there as well. And then I think I'll do another Delica row and then maybe a row of 15s. And that will pretty much get me over the edge of this piece. And what I want to do then is trim this and then mount it so that I can use it as my centre focal for the rest of my bead embroidery piece. So I will keep going with doing this. So the Bead Society is currently at Craft Alive in Bendigo today. So shout out to our Bead Society members who are volunteering at the Craft Alive stand in Bendigo. If you're up that way and you're looking for something to do, by all means, go along and see the Bead Society at Craft Alive. Great way to see some of the other work that our members actually do. And I just got a nice little tangle just there. As you know, when I do these lives, you get to see it warts and all. So it's a slight, I just looped that through. Oh gosh, now I've really tangled it, haven't I? Okay, so I'll just unthread my needle, find the best tool ever, the awl, and actually just unloop that. If you don't have a beading awl, you might have seen me talk about these before. This is my most utilised beading tool. I love it. It's the awl for everything. I use it on everything. I said earlier I kind of use glue with a toothpick or an icy pole stick. I can use the awl to apply glue as well. So if you don't have a beading awl, by all means grab one. Best tool that I utilise all the time. Just try and thread my needle again. Okay, so go back through here and keep adding. In terms of the threads length, when I started with pretty much my standard, 1.5 meters. I pretty much always use that length to start any beading project with. I'm not frightened of adding new thread in, joining thread. I just find it easier to work with that length rather than anything too much longer. Particularly if you're not using not using file line, but using a thread base, it can get pretty frayed easily if it's too long. So my suggestion always is to start with about 1.5 meters of thread. And then if I want to get anything more, I just add it in. So, and I also find that it's I get less tangles when I start with that thread. So again, I'm at the end of my row here. So always at the end of a peyote row, I'm stepping up by going through the first bead added in this round. So when I pull that tight, you can start to see I'm coming up over the edge of this cab. Now this cab is a handmade cab, so it's not going to be perfectly flat or round like any other sort of machine cab. So I might need to do an extra row. I'll just need to play that by ear and see what that looks like. Now my next row, I'm going to do a row of black delicas. So this is the number 10 shiny black delica, and again thinking about that cork fabric, this is going to be a really nice match with those little sort of specks of black in it as well. And I've got some other little fun beads that I'm going to add on to the outside of that piece, so you'll see what I've got planned. The other way I've loved to use bead embroidery is with the shrinket flowers as well. So the shrinket flowers lend themselves really nicely to a bead embroidery project, particularly when you are using fabric as the background, because they stand out really nicely as a great feature. So I've got some samples of that. So you can see there when I've added that final row, that last row of delicas, they've just flipped over the edge of that piece. So I'm now starting to really hold that cab in place. You can see there's my 4 rows. Or 1, 2, 3, 4 rows that I have there now, and I count those by going 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's 5 rows. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 3 and 2, which makes 5 rows of peyote. So I'll probably end up with 6 rows on this piece, and I will keep just adding in 1 delica in each gap there. One, and 1. So when I pull that nice and tight, you can see those delicas just filling in that gap there, going over the edge of my piece, and then I'll do one final row of 15s just to finish that off. So again, I haven't changed the number of beads that I've got around this ring in terms of reducing the size to capture. I've changed the bead type, and the bead type is this, start with an 11. So I've done 2 rows of 11s, 2 rows of delicas, and then either 1 or 2 rows of 15s over this edge. And that will finish this off really, really nicely. Now, because I'm making a 3D piece, what I want is this cab to be raised up slightly to the rest of the work. So by doing this little cab on a separate piece of stiff stuff, not on my main piece, it will actually give that nice little raised look to it as well. So, you could do this directly onto the shape that I'm going to make, but I wanted to show how you can build up some depth. So again, I'm stepping up by going through the first bead added in this round. So you can see there I'm going through 2 beads. And now I just want to add 1 row of 15. So if you look there, you can see that cab's been really nicely captured all the way around. And I'm going to add just 1 row of 15s, and I've got this little bronze colour here, and this is again that similar to that mauve colour, slightly different. And I'll just add some 15s, and they've just managed to spill their way all over the desk, but that's okay. Wouldn't be fun if I wasn't being a messy beater. Okay, so one little tiny row of 15s, and then this piece I will trim it. Now, the other thing that's really handy with bead embroidery is great scissors. So you need different types of scissors, obviously, in beading for different things. So, you know, I have a pair of cutters that are just for fire line. I have some scissors that I will utilise to cut fabric, scissors for thread, and a really good pair of fine pointy scissors for bead embroidery are a terrific tool because they help you to get into little neat, you know, little corners of things as well. So yeah, make sure that when you're doing this type of work that you've got multiple types of scissors to actually utilise, because it just helps with the different applications of how you're using bead embroidery. And for this, I've got some great, and I'll show you the technique for cutting your fabric as well, so that you're not going to cut the thread. So you will have noticed I haven't looked once to see what's happening in the back of this piece. I'm not really concerned about cutting my threads because I know how I've actually beaded right up against the cab when I started that first foundation row, and I'm really confident that I won't cut my thread. So many scissors. That's exactly right, Meg. So you've got scissors, yeah, for cutting cup chain too. That's exactly right. I've got another pair of scissors that I use for cup chain, or a little pair of pliers, you know, metal cutters to do that as well. But on my desk over here, I think I've got about 12 pairs of scissors on there for all different sorts of these, and I know which ones I'll need to do which activity. And scissors, you know, even these little green ones, and you will have all seen this type of scissor, you know, this with this plastic thing, super sharp, and they're not expensive. Like I think you get about 4 pairs for $12 or $15 they used to be at the craft show. So Rosemary, if you're at the craft show and the scissor man's there, I'll have some of those. They're a really great sharp little pair of scissors to utilise. And I've got some nice Tim Holtz scissors that I use as well. A beautiful pair of these little Sarju embroidery scissors. These are beautiful for cutting little tiny threads. So yeah, scissors are lots of variety in the scissor world that you can use with bead embroidery or beading in general. Okay, so I'm nearly finished that row here. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to cut this piece and then mount it onto the cork fabric. So, one. Okay. Now I don't need to step up this time because that's my final round, and I'm pulling that really nice and tight now. So you can see that cab has been beautifully captured all the way around. I'm going to leave that thread. I'm not going to take that off. I don't need to go around this again. I don't need to tighten. That's tight enough. But what it does, I've got these lovely little sections here that I could add beads onto by going through, you know, these sorts of parts here. But first we're going to actually cut that off. So I talked about scissors before, so I'm just going to grab these. So this is one of my pairs of Tim Holtz scissors. This is the smaller pair. I also have the big pair of these as well. And these are a really nice scissor for cutting this bead embroidery foundation fabric. And one of the ways to cut it is to make sure that you are just going straight up and down. So I'm not angling my fabric at all. I'm just going straight up and down as I cut this around my foundation fabric, because I want to avoid cutting my stitches at the back, which hold my piece in place. So I'm just holding it straight, cutting it straight, and I can tell by the feel that I haven't cut through any threads, partly because it's fire line and I would know by the feel of it. But when I flip that over, you can see there I've not cut through any of those threads in my foundation rows. So I'm secure that these these beads are going to stay in place. Alicia's out walking and listening to me. Good on you, Alicia. It's good to hear you're actually doing some activity and listening at the same time. Okay, so now I've got this beautiful little cab here that I want to mount on something. So as I said earlier, I've got some gorgeous cork material. And I think this is going to look super fun on cork, but this is obviously way too big. So I'm just going to get a mould, and I'm going to cut the shape of that template with that. Now, so to cut that, I've got these fantastic moulds they're a polymer clay mould or template, whatever you'd like to call it, and I've got them in all sorts of different shapes here. But what I find is that they're fantastic for drawing the shapes that I want my pendant pieces to be. And I think I'll do this sort of almond shaped shield will be the one that I'll be use. They're called a Melanie Muir polymer clay template, and I love them for using as earring shapes or pendant shapes, etc. So I'm just going to get my pen here. I'm actually going to flip it over. And where did I get them from? These, I got these originally, I think I got the first couple from, I saw them at Danny's workshop, but I bought them online from melaniemuir.com. So these are a fantastic tool for cutting shapes and things out of. So I'm just going to place that onto my fabric, get my pen. I'm just going to try and avoid that selvage edge there. And I'm just going to draw. Yep, let's come through on there. Draw out my shape. So Melanie Muir organic templates, I think they're called. And she's from the UK. And I'm just cutting out my cork fabric. So just using, I'm cutting right on that pen mark line. And this will be the foundation that you'll actually see on this bead embroidery piece. So, sorry, I'll just need to just move that camera up slightly. Move this back over here so you can see what I'm doing. The cork fabric, I think I got this on eBay or somewhere like that. So I've got it in lots of different sort of printed finishes and techniques, and it's got that nice cork finish on the front. So that's the cork finish here, and then just a fabric-y sort of finish on the back. So you can see now how this piece is going to look with that beautiful bead embroidered cab right in the centre of it. So it will look something like that, and I'm going to do some other techniques now and show you what that'll look like. But the first thing I want to do is mount this piece on here. I might size up a few other beads and see what they're going to look like. So what I grabbed out was some little ginkgo beads, and I sort of figured the colours of these would look really nice, you know, around this piece here, something like that maybe. I want to do some sort of bead embroidery and stop stitches, so I'll go through and show you some of those as well. And I want to make sure that I see a really nice finish around this edge. Now, when I said earlier that I've got the white stiff stuff, and, you know, you really are going to cover it up and not going to see that edge. But one of the other things you can do is get a Sharpie, and you can just colour that edge in with your Sharpie as well. So then I'm not going to really see any white at all by just using a black Sharpie on that white edge there. So there's another tip for you. Have a Sharpie around, and you can just colour that in. And of course you can use, you know, different coloured Sharpies as well. So that just blends that in even further. Okay, now I said earlier the glue that I'm going to utilise is the E6000, and here is, that's a fresh tube. I wonder if I've got one that's already open. They go off so easily, those tubes of glue. This is another pair of my Tim Holtz scissors, so this is another really fine pair as well. I think I've shown you 5 or 6 scissor types so far. So I've got a tube of E6000 open here. I'm just going to squeeze some of that out, pop that onto the back of my cab here, like that. And then I'm going to place that in the centre. So I'm pretty much just going to use my eye to work out where the centre of that is. But of course, I could be really technical and rule it and just see what it is, so which is probably not a bad thing. So at the height, it's 4,200 at the height, at the widest point there, 42, yep. So that's about there, about 21 is that top. So now, you know, very, very technical in terms of where that sits, but I'm now just going to sit that cab right on that blue dot there in that centre. Okay, so there's my mounted piece on that cab. Move some of this stuff out of the way. And what I want to do now is actually do a finish around that edge so that you're not actually going to see that when they're mounted on. And it's also so that my piece is attached firmly. So I've glued it, but I also want to make sure that it's sort of stitched onto there as well. So I'm just going to run through that base a couple of times, just a few times around that edge. So I'm coming up through the back of my cork, up through my base row here, and I'm just securing it by going through and doing a couple of running stitches to make sure that that piece, as much as I've glued it, is secure. So again, I'm just sort of coming up through the beadwork and popping my needle all the way through to the back and just doing a few running stitches just to keep that piece secure. Again, see, you can see I've just sort of gone through 3 or 4 pieces there and push that all the way through. And so by the time I've done the glue and these sort of, you know, 3 or 4 stitches and then an edge piece, this will be well and truly secure on this foundation. Because this cork fabric's really thin, it's like paper, you know, sort of material. It's not enough to be the straight foundation piece for this. So I will utilise the thin plastic to sit behind this to hold this nice and stiff for when I finish it. Okay, now I want to do some edging on this. So I grabbed out earlier some different stop beads. So I've got some little goldish sort of coloured pearls there. I've got some black beads. I've got some crystals. And what I want to do is a bit of a half technique. So you can use size 8 beads really, really effectively here as a stop bead. And my size 8 beads are here. And one of the ways I like to use the size 8 beads, and I'll show you what I mean by a half and half technique. So this piece here, this is one of my all-time favourite pieces. This is by Sherry Serafini and it's called A Winged Heart, and I've made lots of these over the years. And what I love about this is it's got this sort of half technique. So you can see around this side here, it's got these stop stitches all around one side. Then the other side, it's got sort of a running stitch around this side. So it's that definition of half and half on each side. So that's the sort of thing I'm going to do with this piece here. Again, as I said, you know, when you go and do classes with different teachers, you learn different things and techniques and pick them up along the way. So this one's going to have some of these stop beads around one side, and I might even do thirds potentially. So a stop bead is simply picking up a bead, and what I want is that bead to sit with its hole facing the top. I'm then going to grab a size 15 bead, and I think I want to do a black so that it's got that contrast there with the gold. So I've got some black 15s out. And I'm just going to do one black 15 bead and go back straight down through my size 8 bead that I had here. And now I've just created what's called a stop bead. So you can see there, it's when you look on the side of it, that little size 8 bead is sitting nice and proudly with its hole facing the front or the top. And then I've just created that stop by adding a size 15 bead onto the top of that. So you can see there I've now got a second one side by side, and that's going to create a nice little row all the way around this piece of little stop beads. And because I want the cork to feature in this and you want to be able to see the cork, I'm not going to, I'm not going to cover that entire piece with beads like I've shown you on some of the earlier examples. The cork will still be a feature of this piece. Sorry, my needle has come unthreaded again. There we go. Okay, so that's some little stop beads. So far I've shown you how to do a cab piece from the base and then mounting that onto a fabric, how to cut your bead embroidery so that you don't cut through your threads, how to use a Sharpie to actually colour your foundation fabric, the different types of and different colours of foundation fabric that are available, and how to use fabric as well to be a feature on your bead embroidery piece. So hopefully that's some tips. Also how to use one of the polymer clay organic shape cutters to create your templates. So that they're a really great tool. I utilise those for lots of different things in beading and in clay work. So you can see here I've now got 5 of these little stop beads around my piece. And that one's not behaving. There it goes. So they just create that nice feature around that edge there. Okay. Now, I don't know how many I'm going to get, and I could alternate and try and work out the math of it, but I don't think I will. I'll just keep going with this for a little bit, and then I want to change it up and do something different like I showed you on that winged heart piece. Create a couple of other feature things on this, and then I want to show you how to join and back this piece as well. Backing on bead embroidery usually requires another fabric or leather element. Actually, I could use the snakeskin leather. That would be nice on the back of this. So that's what sits against your skin. And, of course, it covers the multitude of stitches that you have underneath your beadwork, because we're going to cover the entire back piece of this beading with fabric, and you will not see any of those stitches because of the fabric backing that we're putting in. So it can be super messy underneath, but nobody is going to see that. Okay, so I've done that sort of third, I suppose, there. What do we think, people? Are we liking the look of this so far? Any comments, feedback on what people think of it? I think the black dots on the cork look really, really cool. Nice neutral sort of colour palette on this piece. Keep going. Okay, so that's probably enough. I'll try something different now. So let's look at another sort of technique to finish around here. And maybe I might just do some of these 4mm pearls. So I've got some 4mm pearls here. And what I want to do is just sort of run those through on a back stitch, and then I want to put some beads in between them. So I'll just pick up one at a time, and I'm stitching that pearl down, just one at a time, like this. So that pearl's now sitting against the beadwork. I'm going to come back up through and do a back stitch again through that pearl, like that. And then I want to add another one right next to it. So I will actually then go through and do a sort of little a thread bridge, I suppose I would call it, in between those pearls, so that you're not going to see any thread. So again, I'm just back stitching one pearl at a time. Yeah, Meg, I could mount it on stiff stuff as well. Meg's asked whether I would mount the cork on foundation, stiff stuff too. I could, but I think what I'll actually do is I'll mount it on the plastic because I'm not covering the entire thing with beads. I don't think that I need to have the stiff stuff for that extra stability, but otherwise, if it was going to be entirely covered, yeah, I potentially would. but not for this particular piece. So you can see there I've just got 3 pearls now in that back stitched format. And, you know, I could be a real rebel and just potentially only do 3 and do 3 or maybe 5. I might do 5 and do an asymmetrical looking piece. Very unlike me. I don't often do asymmetrical things, but I'll do it this time. So I'm just going to add 5 of these pearls like this. So again, you know, I am potentially designing on the fly again as I'm going with this. I had in mind what I was going to show you today, but I didn't really know how it was going to work out. So I'm pretty happy with what it's looking like so far. So that's 5 of those pearls. And again, I'm just back stitching those on. Again, I don't want to go right to the edge of this piece. If I was doing a fully bead embroidery piece where the beads were covering the whole fabric, you know, like this type here, I would bead right to that very edge of the fabric so that you're not going to see any of the foundation. But for this, I'm actually not going to go all the way. I'm just going to do a little asymmetrical. And then I might do something different out of here. So one of the other things that I do like to utilise with this is maybe the Rizzo beads. Here, I'll get those. Or no, they're called Duo Drops. So these Duo Drop beads are a nice little 2-hole bead. So you can see them there, the 2-hole bead. These are the slippered sort of finish or rose gold capri or something. So they've got the 2 holes in them, and they're going to make a nice little sort of winged section off the side there. But for consistency, I'm just going to do maybe 1 or 2 more of the stop beads here as well. So I'm going to just do maybe just 2 more stop beads there. And then I'm going to come back and do something across those pearls, so you'll see what I mean there about a little bridge. And then we'll do these little duo drops. Duo drops? I can't remember the names of every bead that I've utilised. Okay. So I just pop those 2 little stop beads there just so that I've got some consistency with the other side. And now I'm going to do the drops. So the drops with the 2-hole are fantastic. So I might just pick up 1, a size 15, 1, a size 15, 1, a size 15, maybe 4 of those. And they're just going to create this nice little sort of winged effect off the side here. What do we think about that? Now, I think I might just do 1 more and 1 more, and then maybe 2 more pearls on the other side, or 1 more pearl, and that will tie that in as well. So I'm just going to attach that like that. Okay, that's just very loosely attached for right now. I will go back and secure that a little bit more. What do we think about that? And then look, that's a nice little spot there for a couple more pearls to go in. So I've managed to now keep that consistency of theme across this piece with the stop beads, the pearls repeating right across. So I'm just utilising those, back stitching those again. I am going to come back and attach them a bit further, but I'm just going to pop in 2 maybe pearls in there. Let's see how that fits. 1, I'm going to put 2 on at the same time. And see if they fit into that hole, which I think they will. Look at that. It's like it was made to go like that. So the pearls are just popped in there. And just fill that hole really, really nicely. So we've got the cabochon now. We've got a different sort of bead embroidery edges around it with either stop beads, the back stitched pearls, or the drop beads. And I'm going to do a nice little bridge over those pearls, but I just want to attach those pearls a little bit further, going back through and back stitching them again. Oops. Okay, so what happened there? I just undid my thread and came all the way back out through. So I reverse beaded that without even meaning to. So let me do that again. Okay, back stitch that properly, Paula. Okay, they're sitting nice and secure now there as well. I'll move those out of the way. Now, that little thread bridge, what I want to do is I want to come up between those two pearls there, and I want to add a little bridge of beads across it. So I've popped out some size 15s here, and I'll pick up maybe, I think probably about 5, no, I might go more, 7 beads, and I'm just going through in between those two pearls like that. You can see there now I've just made that little thread bridge between them. Now, I want to actually secure these drop beads a little bit further. So remember they had 2 holes in them. So I'm going to pop a different coloured size 15 in between. So I've picked up a size 15 first. I'm going through that hole there. And then I'm just going to add another 15 in between each of those beads. Like that. Like that. And like that. So now they've just got that nice little size 15s. I'll just pop one on the edge and stitch down through my fabric again to secure that. And then I want to just make sure that that's not loose, that it actually does sit. So I'm going to just come back up and thread through from the back of the fabric through those beads again, just to stitch that down onto my cork fabric. So I'm sort of going through, 3 beads at a time just to secure that. Again, I'll just back stitch that on. And secure those. Okay. Now, I also now want to make sure that I've got those little thread bridges between these pearls. So I'm really going to cheat, and I'm just going to bring my needle all the way back over here. I don't have to thread through anything because remember what I said earlier, all these stitches are going to be covered, so you won't see any of that. So I've just dragged the needle right across the back of the fabric there. So again, I'll pick up 7 size 15s and just create that little bridged loop in between those beads like that. Pick up again, so I'll go through the next little bit, pick up 7 beads, go through that, seven beads, seven, one more. Okay. What do we think, people? I reckon it looks pretty good actually so far. So now, because I want to make sure that I've got this higher point here on this side, I want to do something lower down on this side to balance that out. So, and I've got this sort of vision of something coming around that way potentially on this. So I'm just going to bring my needle sort of out there somewhere. And let's have a look at what some of the other beads are that I could potentially add in. So again, I could put some more of these little drop beads in here. They might work, but I don't think I want to do those. I've got the lovely little ginkgo beads that potentially some of those could work. Or the other one that I grabbed out was, I think these are called candy beads. So, you know, potentially one or two of those might work. I think that's probably a better look. So I'm going to pop one of these candy beads on. Again, I'm just going to move my needle to come from the back because I want to come up through that candy bead. Now, candy beads have 2 holes as well, so that's going to secure really nicely there on that piece. Just come up through one of those holes there. And attach that like that. And I think I've got a black 6mm cab that might look nice to go next to that. So I'm reducing the size of the cab. Let me just see what I've got there. So see, I've got the one candy bead and then maybe another black one. I'm going to grab those out, which I didn't have out before. That might work too. So there's the sort of the smaller. Oh no, is that the same size? It might look the same size, so that doesn't look too bad. The black with it as well. Or the other thing I thought of, I had some of these triangular black beads too that might work in there too. No, don't like them. I think I'll do the black one. So that black, and then potentially another bronze one as well might work like that. What do you think? I don't know if I like that. I like the black with it, but I think I want the smaller ones. I've got some crystals there that might work as well. Black. Oh, here's another black choice. What's this one? The little black diamond shaped bead. Yeah, that might work too. That's actually not too bad because that's sort of reflective of this diamond shape in here as well. Okay, so another thing to do around this little candy bead, black, where candy gold is. I don't know what that means, Alex. Black. So you think the black one works here. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to do that same sort of bead embroidery technique, but one of the things I've got is these lovely holes in here. Sorry, I'm going to show you a different way to actually add some cabochon, some beads around that edge. So I've got my 2 holes there. And I'm just going to pick up, I'm coming out through one of the holes on that candy bead. I'm just going to pick up 5 beads and then go back through that hole again. And what this is doing, rather than beading through the fabric, I'm actually just putting those beads around the edge of my candy-shaped bead. So I'm going to come back through those beads again. So what I'm doing is capturing that cab, but in a different way. I'm not using the fabric, I'm just using the bead holes to do that. So again, I'll pick up another 5 beads. I'm only guessing 5 to go through those holes. I think maybe 4 goes through the side one. I have used these this technique before with these sorts of beads. So 5, look at that, the black beads are just around there. And now I'm going to pick up another 4 beads. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go through that hole again. There. Like that. Come back through here. And I think I probably need the 5 beads again to make that even around that candy bead. Although I don't think I need to go all the way around because I've got those little stop beads there. So I'm just going to pull that down first and have a look at it. So you can see there, I've just got the black just around. I need a couple more there on that side. So I'll come back through those beads again. Like that. And just pull that tight. So they sit nice and flat now around that cab. And I reckon I need 5. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I bring them through to that first size 11s there. And look, I've just got that nice little capture around that cabochon. So again, I didn't have to do the 1-2 peyote stitch all the way around because I'm not coming up over the edge of this. I'm just trying to capture a bead edge around it. I could just do a couple of back stitches through this now just to secure those onto the foundation, but I didn't have to do the bead embroidery back stitch. I utilised the holes in the candy beads to actually attach those beads onto this piece. So just another way, utilise, bead holes wherever they may have them to further secure your beads onto your bead embroidery foundation. Okay, so that's just got this nice little ring around there as well. And then potentially, just some of these, actually I think this is where these go back into it now. Some of these little duo beads, if I just bring those around here, that ties that in really nicely as well. So again, I picked those up with a black duo, black duo, black duo, black. And if I just pop that little thread here, like that. So now I've got that repeating theme of the duos and the duos. So again, I'm just going to come up through the side there and add the size 15 bronze in between each of those, like that. Okay, so my piece could potentially have a couple of things filled in here too. So when I'm just going to secure those by back stitching through them a couple of times. Another way to sort of fill in your texture is with sort of straight lines of beads, and we might do a little bit of that there so I can show you that technique. So I'm going to go back to the very first beads that I started with, the size 11 bronze beads. I'm just going to do a couple of rows here of bead embroidery with a couching method. So what I'm doing is picking up 5, 6, 7 beads of size 11, and I'm just sort of placing them on my beadwork like that. So you can see they're filled in there. And to couch them, you actually run through all those beads again to secure them. And then you can do a little overstitch over it as well, but it's one way of creating those really nice straight lines in your beadwork. Secure that by going through it again. And I'm just going to run my thread over those beads a couple of times. So you can see there I've just gone right through where the two beads meet. So you don't see this little capturing thread. It's just going over where the two beads are. I'm going to need a new thread. And if I just pull that tight, they'll just pop in there and make those nice little lines in beadwork. So I'll just do another couple of rows of that. But I'm going to get a new thread first because I've just run out of thread. So that's 1.5 meters of thread that we've just gone through with this project. And once I've done a couple more rows of this, I'll show you how to back and join this piece. What I would do on this would be create a bail that sits on the top. So, sort of an odd count peyote stitch bail is probably what I would do. It's a pretty standard technique that I use on a lot of my pendant pieces. And I want to show you how to do what I love as a bead embroidery edge. So that'll be the next couple of things we'll go through. So again, I've just added a new thread. So I'm just doing a knot in the end of it, my thread, and then I can just come up back through my beadwork here and continue adding on that sort of little row of beads. So Again, I'll pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to do 8 this time, so that I'm going to come past where my previous row was, so it's a little bit longer. And I want to just flip that so that it sits underneath that beadwork like that. And my knot didn't hold, so I will do that again. As I said, when they're live, you get to see mistakes at all. Okay, so start that again. So pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 7, 8. And then come just to the outside of where that previous row was. And pop that so that it just sits alongside it and it's running that bead. So that's one of the ways that you fill in. You realise I used black, it would have... Yeah, black probably would have taken away from this. I think that's a good point, Alex. The black, and I'll just pop a black one on there so we can see the contrast. You can see, I agree. I think the bronze looks better than the black, definitely. What does other people think about that? I agree, Alex. I think the bronze, but with those sort of little black highlights here, match in there as well. Look, a lot of this is definitely trial and error, but I think, you know, you can place things on, and you saw me place those beads on before I actually attached them to see whether they were actually going to fit, and they did. The round candy bead definitely was the best pick with adding those extra beads on. So you can see there I've just done 2 sort of little rows there. I might just do one more little feature just so that you can see another idea that I have. And I love to use crystals for fringing in this type of piece. And I've had some crystals here, some lovely rose gold ones. And I think maybe just 3 or 4 crystals. Okay, so, sorry, I just knocked my camera then. Okay, so I'm going to just pop a couple of little fringing pieces on here. So a fringe is, I usually pick up a size 11 bead, a feature bead, and then a size 15 bead. So it's like the stop beads that I did earlier, but the little size 11 at the bottom just gives it that bit of depth and fringe. So I'm just popping I'm skipping through the 15 and going back through the crystal and the size 11 bead and adding a little bit of height and depth by popping a little fringe on here. So I'm just going to repeat that, you know, probably 4 or 5 times with the crystal. And what I love about this technique is it just gives a little bit of height and movement to your piece. So I'll pop 1, 2, and then a 3rd one in there. Okay. So I haven't covered over all of my cork. I still can see the foundation of that cork fabric here. Got the little flecks of black that are reflected in the beads every so often. And that nice little bit of fringe just at the bottom there. Do I think it needs anything else? I don't think it does. I think that's probably enough. I could potentially have popped another one down here, but I think that sort of takes away from it as well. No, I think that's enough. Okay, so what I want to show you now is how I actually then back and join these. Now, remember I said earlier that this is one of the this is one of the thinner pieces I've used because of the foundation fabric. But what I'm going to do is put a piece of plastic. So this is called extra thick template plastic for quilting, for creating shapes and things. But I find this really good for using in bead embroidery. So I'm going to go back to my template shape that I utilised earlier, if I can find where I put it, up here. So again, I'm going to cut that same shape out. but I'm going to cut it the smaller one. And that's the beauty of using these things, is that they come in so many different shapes on these templates. Now I want it to be slightly smaller because when I when I join the plastic, I don't want to stitch through the plastic. So I'm just going to cut that just slightly smaller than my original cork piece. Just cut that. And as I said, this is, quilting plastic. I don't know where I got this from. I think Cynthia Rutledge, when I did a class with her, it was one of the things that we utilised. So you could use, as I said, like a milk bottle. You could use like divider, folder dividers. But yeah, I find this plastic a really good, nice quality. And what I'm going to do is glue that onto this piece here. So remember, I made that slightly smaller. So you can see now when I stitch that on, when I glue that on, I've still got my free edge here to do my fabric backing on. So slightly smaller, but it's going to make a really nice stiff piece to utilise and hold my beadwork in place. So again, I'll get the glue. I'm just going to pop some glue onto the back of my piece. I probably do need to open a new glue. This glue, I do love it, but my God, it's wasteful. It dries up super, super easy, and that's why I only buy the small tubes, because you go through it really, really quickly. So I'm just going to spread that glue, spread it over my stitches as well, helping to further secure them. Get my little piece of plastic and just glue my plastic on there. So now this piece has got a nice weight to it with that piece of plastic. And now I want to get my backing fabric. So as I said, I had this beautiful snake skin leather that I could utilise. I also had out some suede, but I think I'll use this. I'll use this leather. So this leather here, I've got the snake skin shiny side, or I've got this side. I probably like this side more than anything. So again, because I've got that gorgeous template, I can get exactly the right shape. So I'm going to use my template again to just draw on, I'm going to draw on the side that I'm not going to see, so that there's no danger of any pen marks coming through. And cut that out. If you could see behind the scenes how messy my bead desk has just gotten. I'm just grabbing stuff and throwing them to one side as I'm working on it. So that'll be my job after I finish here today, will be to clean all of this up. Okay, so there's my nice little piece of leather. The same size, obviously, because I use the template. And what I want to have is this side showing on the back, so I'm going to glue this side together. So again, I've got my little piece of plastic here, and I'm going to glue these three things together now. So the plastic, the bead embroidery, and the foundation piece, sorry, the backing piece. I just opened a new glue, so pop some glue onto here. I'm avoiding the edges. I don't want to go right to the edge of this because I'm going to have to put my needle through it, so I want to try and avoid it. I've still got my thread attached from before. I haven't had to add a new thread. And now I'm just going to sandwich all of those three things together. Okay, so you can see now I've got my backing piece and my three things. My thread is just sort of coming out wherever I want it to come out. And what I'm going to do is do a really nice edge on here. Now, my absolute favourite technique for bead embroidery edge is utilising either demi-rounds or O beads on this edge. And I'll show you a couple of pieces that have that on it, because what it does is create a really nice lacy effect. So this is where I've just used demi-rounds on that edge piece here. Okay, so I've added nothing else onto this edge, just the demi-rounds. That's a shrink plastic design piece, but you can see they're just demi-rounds. There's another one that's got just a demi-round edge on it. I'm going to use black demi-rounds because I don't want to see the thread on this, because the thread does show. So I've got some black demi-rounds here, and I'm just going to utilise my existing thread. Oh, there you go. Eltham Quilt Shop sells vinyl template sheets. Thanks, Glenda. There you go. If anyone's interested in getting any of that plastic, the Eltham Quilt Shop has it. Okay, so to do a bead embroidery edge, and I do have a longer form YouTube tutorial on how to do this edge because I utilise this quite a lot. I start with 2 demi-round beads, and I'm going to go through the width of 2 beads here. So I'm going through the backing fabric and through the cork fabric, and I'm just going to come up through the second bead added like that. And when I pull that tight, it just sits really nice and flatly against my beadwork. Now I've utilised black because the black is going to feature with the cork little dots as well. And now I just repeat that with 1 bead at a time. So this is bead embroidery, edging, blanket stitch, whatever you want to call it. But for me, utilising the O beads to do this is a really, really cool way to get a nice lacy finish. So I just pick up 1 bead at a time and then just go through that edge just like that. Just like that. Okay, you can see there I'm getting that really nice lacy effect. There's the back. So the back is beautifully finished with this nice leather. You can see this lovely bead embroidery cork and just the demi-rounds as that bead embroidery edge. And they create a really nice finish. So I'm not going to finish all of this and show you all of this today. I'll do that later today and you'll get to see that. But you can see there, oh, I just twisted that then. I went through the wrong way. You can see how that edge creates that beautiful finish, and I will finish this later today and then I'll post it once I've done that. But that edge all the way around is going to finish that piece off beautifully. So that's pretty much some bead embroidery basics that I'm showing you today. We went through some couching of beads. We did some stop-start beads here and around the edge. We built up a cabochon side. We added some little bridges between pearls. We used some 2-hole beads in different components and did a bit of bead fringing. And I also showed you how to do a bead embroidery edge. I hope you enjoyed seeing that today. I look forward to finishing that off later this afternoon and cleaning up my bead room. I'm just going to flip my camera around. So thanks everyone for stopping by and watching that today. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you all again next time. My next one is going to be on creating a toggle and loop. And I've actually double booked myself again, so I'm just going to change the time of that. It'll be in the afternoon, not in the morning. But hope everyone's enjoyed that one, and I look forward to seeing you in a month or so. Thanks everybody. Bye for now.